Are you making the 3 worst design mistakes you can when building a no-code app? Let's find out. Hey there, Carl here from the NoCode School. Today I'm sharing with you the 3 worst design mistakes you can make when building a no-code app. Let's get into design mistake number 1. Skipping the design process altogether. As building no-code apps is a really visual process, often with a drag and drop interface builder, people make the mistake of immediately jumping into their no-code tool of choice and they just start building their product. I call this design as you go, and it's a bad idea. This results in a poorly thought out user experience, and it kind of looks like your app's been slapped together. What you should do instead is start with a process called wireframing. Wireframing is the process of sketching out all of the screens and flows in your app before you build them. The goal of this process is to spend the time thinking about and improving the user experience before you go ahead and invest the time in building the product. I use a tool called Miro for this. You could use a proper design tool like Figma if you know how to, but personally I don't do this because I find that you get too caught up in trying to make the design of each screen perfect rather than focusing on iterating quickly on the overall user experience. You can always move your designs into Figma later. A tool like Miro is really simple, which means that you can move really fast. I can usually wireframe up a simple app in about half a day, and a really complex app probably takes about 2 days. I'll quickly show you the wireframing library in Miro. You can turn it on here, and then you have access to all of the components you need to map out your entire user experience. So you can drag a screen on, you can add an input box, you can drag an image on. These are all the sorts of things that you can do, and you can see it's very simple. The final output from the wireframing process should look something like this. If you're learning something from this video, please like and subscribe to the channel so that I know to keep making content like this. Let's get into design mistake number 2. Thinking that more is better. Most people, and maybe this is your situation, when you finally get around to sitting down to start building your app, you spend a lot of time thinking about it already. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it's not a bad thing at all. But the trap is, you've often spent a lot of time thinking about all the possible features your app could have. What if it did this? What if it did that? The problem with this is that more features doesn't necessarily mean a better app. In fact, often the opposite is true. The more features you have, the more overwhelming it is for the user. The more difficult it is to onboard the user because you need to educate them about where all these different features are and how to use them. It's often an issue for you to come up with a clear value proposition because you're trying to sell all these different features rather than, well, what is the single problem that you solve? What is the benefit and the value proposition that you're bringing to the market? So that's what you should do. Get really clear on the problem that you're trying to solve. And then ask yourself this question. If my app had only one core feature, what would that feature be? You start there, and then you need to be absolutely ruthless about whether the additional features that you want to add actually do solve that core problem. The process I take my clients through, which you can absolutely replicate at home, it's very straightforward, is this. Step 1 is to get really clear on that problem that you're trying to solve. So write out the problem statement so it's clear in your mind. From there, go into a brainstorming exercise. List out all the different functionality that the app could have. And there's no constraints here, right? You want to list out everything that's come to mind, anything that is possible that you think could add value to the user. I actually do this in Miro as well, as this process comes before the wireframing process. So I use sticky notes and list out all of the different functionality using post-it notes. From there, step 3 is to go in and do a prioritization exercise. So you want to create 2 sections. You want to have must-haves and nice-to-haves. And then you go feature by feature. So you take those sticky notes and you ask yourself, is this a must-have or is this a nice-to-have? And what you want to do is you want to do that in the context of the problem you're trying to solve and who you're trying to solve it for. The goal here really is to minimize the number of must-haves. So you take each feature and you ask yourself, does this feature solve the core problem that I'm trying to address with this platform? If the answer is no or maybe, it's a nice to have. The answer should be yes, this solves the core problem, then it's a must-have. Once you have the short list of must-haves, that becomes the scope of the first version of your app, and that's what you should build. From there, you then go into that wireframing process and start to design out all of your screens and flows. Let's get into design mistake number 3, failing to make the user experience frictionless. If you're new to the world of apps and creating software, you may not realize that user experience design is as much a science as it is a field of design. There are a whole bunch of fundamentals and best practices that have come out of decades of data and research into how users interact and engage with software and apps. While there are many fundamentals that you can learn over time, the absolute most important one is how to create a user experience that is as frictionless as possible. If your app has too many barriers to get started, or it's too overwhelming, or your user has to jump through too many hoops to achieve anything, you'll lose more users than you acquire. The solution is to review every screen, every flow, every feature in your app, and ask yourself, how can we reduce the amount of effort required by the user to achieve their objective? For example, can we start delivering value to the user without asking them to go through a sign-up process? A good example of this is TikTok. So on TikTok, you can download the app and start watching videos without having to sign up. And then when you want to engage, like, comment, anything like that, that's when they get you to go through that sign-up process. When we are designing the sign-up process, we should be asking ourselves, what is the absolute minimum information we can request from the user in order to create an account? The reason for this is the more information you collect during sign-up, the less sign-ups you're going to get. Remember that you can always ask for additional information later. At this stage, we just want them to create the account. A good example of this is LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you can create an account just with the basic information, your name and your email. They then give you a bit of a checklist on your dashboard to encourage you to complete your full profile. Imagine if LinkedIn asked you to enter your entire career history in order to create an account. They would lose so many signups. Presenting content and information to our users is another place where we need to make the experience super frictionless. The best way to do that is to understand enough about the user in order to recommend content to them. This is not something that is going to work perfectly from day one, but it's something that you can build towards. A good example of this is something like Netflix. When you go into Netflix, it doesn't ask you to immediately search. Although search is an available function, they have a main home screen or dashboard where they actually recommend different content that you may like. This is an important part of the Netflix experience because it helps for the user to actually discover new content. You want to make sure that you're creating a similar experience in your app. When it comes to designing and building a frictionless user experience, the best thing you can do is download and research the most successful apps out there. Have a look at what they're doing, learn from it, and then apply that to the user experience that you're designing for your app. There you have it, the 3 worst design mistakes you can make when building a no-code app. So don't skip the design process. Wireframe out every screen and flow in your app before you start building it. Design less features, but focus on the features that do the best job of solving the core problem your app is meant to be addressing. And finally, do what you can to optimize and create the most frictionless user experience possible. That's all for today. If you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, and I'll see you next time.